Okay, I've got Carlos Tanner here, who's the actual founder of the Ayahuasca Foundation. I'm on day 9, so he's going to do just a little talk about the Ayahuasca Foundation. Thank you.
What do you want me to say?
Um, that's a good question. What made you want to set up a foundation as opposed to just exploring ayahuasca as a partaker and an explorer? What made you take it to the next level?
Well, I first came down to Iquitos, Peru in 2003 to save my own life. I was spiraling downward into heroin addiction. I was really like messing my life up. That had kind of culminated in me waking up in my car underwater because I had blacked out behind the wheel while drinking and doing drugs and uh, drove off the road into a river. Um, and when I came down, I certainly wasn't planning to open a retreat center, but during my experience, I was having very profound experiences, and the curandero or the shaman that I was working with, Don Juan, he in the third ceremony with him told me that it was my path to be a healer, and he invited me to live with him and study with him and follow the path to be a curandero or a shaman. And my experiences definitely confirmed that that was the right thing for me to do. And so in January of 2004, I moved to Iquitos, Peru, and I started living with him and studying with him. And at that time, like anyone, you're looking at the your past experiences, connecting dots from your past to project forward, see where it's all headed. And I thought, well, I will live here for a while. I'll do this apprenticeship. I'll become a shaman, and then I'll go back home and I'll, treat patients with my shamanic ability. I didn't really understand exactly what I was getting myself into, but while I was there, people would just show up, and I was essentially my teacher's assistant, and they would be tourists or foreigners that didn't speak Spanish oftentimes. So I'd find myself translating, and also find myself explaining, like how to optimize your experience, how to get more from the treatments and the ceremonies, and some of those people would come and stay at our house, and I would get to know them, and again, like just in the way of connecting the dots, I started to think, well, maybe I should offer like a treatment program based on my own experiences. And something I had observed was that for some reason it would always take like a certain amount of time for someone to achieve their healing. And so, it wasn't just like go to a ceremony. It wasn't just take a medicine. It was this combination of this treatment protocol, you could say, according to the tradition here in the Amazon rainforest. And so I started to like formulate like what would I do if someone were to come, like what would be the best general treatment plan for them. And so I started a small tour company with my first teacher, Don Juan, called Ayahuasca Journeys, and we started having retreats, and they were just right out of his house in Iquitos, right on the edge of Iquitos. So like out our door was the Amazon rainforest, but if you went the other way, you went back into town, and that led to us like wanting to build a better place for people to receive treatment that didn't have noisy neighbors, that was more immersed in nature. And again, like step by step, it just um, continued on from there until I met Don Enrique Lopez, who is the curandero that leads our 8-week courses. I've been working with him for 11 years. And when I met him, he wanted to teach so bad. Like it was his vision of his path that he would teach his ancestral traditions to people from all over the world, essentially planting seeds of ancestral tradition back into so many places of the earth that are lacking our awareness of our ancestry and the plant medicine traditions that were such an important part of all of our cultures. And I shared the same thoughts. I was already, 3 or 4 years in, and I had um, written all these notes, and I was like already looking at the notes and seeing all the materials I'd put together. I'd made all these recordings of the ceremonies and filmed, and I had all this material that would be fantastic for someone that was just starting out to have a real quick way to understand the tradition. And so when the two of us got together, it was like clear to me that we were going to do something, and that was when the Ayahuasca Foundation was really born. And then once that happened, like all the pieces just kind of fell in place, and they continue to fall in place. To be honest, the center like happened because someone came and did a documentary film called Ayahuasca Diary, and then he went on to be the president of a charity organization called Grant Town Foundation, and they sent us the money to build this center. And the researchers that are doing research here, that was just recently published in a journal called Frontiers in Psychiatry. One of them, a psychiatrist from the UK, just happened to do our retreat because he happened to run into one of our facilitators on a break, and then when he did the retreat, he decided to do a pilot study on his own credit cards that then allowed him to get a grant from the British Medical Research Council. And there's so many like incredible stories that all kind of came together, and they continue to come together in this project for the Ayahuasca Foundation. So I don't even know if I ever said I'm going to do it. It just was like one step after another, and eventually I looked at where I had gotten by taking all of these steps, and here we were. And honestly, that's really like how it continues to be. I just keep taking one step forward, and when you take that one step forward, you see what's ahead of you again, and you know which direction to keep going. And I never know what's around the next bend, but I'm always excited to find out.
You say that you've had over 1,500 people come to the foundation for different lengths of time, stays and retreats, but are you able to share a few of the symptoms or illnesses that have been helped or cured or helped with the Ayahuasca Foundation commitment?
Well, the best story that easily starts it off is the first ceremony that I did with Don Enrique Lopez. At this retreat center, we work with Don Enrique's younger brother, Ronor Lopez. But originally, I worked with Don Enrique only, and then his brother came to help him. And then when we set up two separate centers, his younger brother came here, and Don Enrique continues, like I said, to offer the 8-week courses at a different center that we operate. And I had put together something called a Curandero seminar, and this must have been in 2008. And I had met Don Enrique, and I liked him so much because of the way he was so forthcoming. Like anything that you asked, he would share generously. And there was a man in that program. There were only like 12 people, but there was a man in that program who had been struck by lightning 33 years prior to that event, and it had collapsed his ear canal, and he had been deaf in one ear for 33 years. And Don Enrique just diagnosed it. He knew what it was, which he referred to as nerve damage, and he knew how to fix it. And he did one ceremony with that man, and then the next morning he left early in the morning and came back with this remedy that he had made. And the man took the remedy, and he was told like that it would take 6 weeks, and so I actually shipped him 2 more bottles of the remedy so that he could take it continuously for 6 weeks. But he said after about 2 weeks, he started hearing hissing and popping sounds in his ears. And after 3 weeks, he went to his audiologist to see, what his ear doctor had to say. And the ear canal had come back to its normal shape again. He continued to take the medicine, and that was whatever 13, 14 years ago, and he's got all his hearing back to this day. So that was incredibly impressive.
Mm.
But I would say that the majority of people that come are looking to treat trauma, um, depression, anxiety, PTSD. Almost everyone like has some level of trauma in their lives that has had a negative effect on them.
And addictions in terms of that connection to the trauma, or that's certainly.
Yeah, definitely people with addiction, and then people with physical ailments also. We usually recommend a longer program for them, and I've seen diabetes, uh, like debilitating arthritis, people that came that weren't not able to walk, but then left walking. Some really like incredible stories. I've seen someone healed of cancer, someone healed of AIDS, actually like 5 or 6 people that had HIV. Some like kind of the big ones, Crohn's disease. You know, things that supposedly you're not able to cure, but I've seen them cured. But it's important to note that the what I feel like the most important part of that healing was the individual's personal beliefs, attitudes, and faith. And a lot of I used to ask a question, and I guess I don't still have the answer, but I used to ask, do you know you're healed because you are, or are you healed because you know? And because there's such a important consciousness element. And I use the word consciousness, I mean really the word is spiritual, but I use the word consciousness more now because I think it's easier for us to comprehend what that means. But when we do change our truths, then the truth changes. And that to me is why ayahuasca is such an incredibly powerful medicine, because it allows us to amplify our sensory perceptive ability to such a degree that we very readily will reanalyze our truths or reform them. And sometimes that means to liquefy the solidity of detrimental truths and vaporize them, or solidify, condensing and freezing new ideas into new truth. And when that happens, reality changes.
One last question, if I may. If someone has a particular physical or mental ailment and they have heard about ayahuasca, what would you suggest they do in terms of research or points of reference to look at before booking onto a retreat?
Right. Well, the word I would use is resonance. It speaks directly to frequencies being in harmony with one another. But in this case, it's about what you feel. When you feel something is right. And so, doing the research, you would want to be putting your attention on what feels right. And usually that starts with an internet experience. Like a particular website, the way that they describe the program or the treatment that they provide, it resonates with you. It feels right. And then if you would find like what feels most right for you, hopefully like you would get to a point where you kind of can use the word no, where you're like, I know this is the right place. That depth of feeling means a lot. But regardless of what degree of feeling right or feeling the best choice, the next step I would say would be to reach out to the person or to the center, or to whatever contact you have, and then to open a dialogue. That could be just an email. If it's possible, I think it'd be more beneficial to have like voice to voice or even a face to face conversation, because you get so much feeling about that. And when you have a conversation with someone, you can tell usually how genuine they are, or how much you trust them, or how much they know what they're talking about. And so then to like deepen that feeling, so that ultimately your goal is to arrive before the treatment has even happened with as much confidence as possible, if not to the full extent of knowing that your goals will be achieved with their help. And then, of course, to remember that your participation is really the most important part. And that goes for Western treatment too. I mean, that just goes for healing across the board. It's just better emphasized in this tradition. I wish there was more emphasis on it in Western medicine, because you don't see a lot of empowerment inside the Western medical model. If anything, there's kind of like a disempowerment where you give away your power to the doctor. But here, you're number one. You're number one in the process, and that's how it should be, because it's your process. And people are assisting you, and the people that we call healers or curanderos, which means healer, they're assisting, but they're not healing you. The healing takes place as they would say, as an act of God, but to be maybe more specific, as a divine motivating principle that exists in all living things. When you cut yourself, do you heal it? Does anyone heal it? Or does it heal? You know, we've watched it all many, many times. You can witness the healing take place, but you don't really do much, except in the case of a cut, which is a great example. You keep it clean. You remove the obstacles that might prevent the healing that wants to take place on its own. And that's most of what we're doing in this tradition. We're just removing obstacles. We're removing the things that are preventing a healing that wants to take place from achieving its destiny.
It's great. Thanks, Carlos.